Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining this episode of Try This at Work. Today is pretty exciting. We're going to uncover some of the work that Microsoft has been up to for the past few years around this idea of general data protection regulation, or what some prefer to reference as GDPR, and how Microsoft 365 specifically helps a number of our customers with their GDPR journey. Before we dive into this episode, I want to make sure you realize that on Friday, a lot of the things that we've been working towards over the years comes to fruition. So GDPR goes into full effect this Friday, the 25th. And so that's where a lot of things are going to happen. A lot of our customers have been extremely busy working towards the 25th, and we're going to uncover a lot of what that work has already looked like. If you're just starting with your journey, that's fine. We're going to show you a lot of ways to get started and expedite kind of getting to where you need to be before Friday, or get the best handle on that. But make sure you realize this is a journey, because what GDPR looks like today, and we'll explain this a little bit in a few moments, will look different to all of us perhaps in 5 years from now. And so what we want to do is really kind of peel back the layers of how does Microsoft 365 help you with your GDPR journey. And so to really make sure you understand what we're talking about when we say Microsoft 365, I want to take a few moments just to kind of lay some groundwork so that you understand whenever you hear Microsoft talk about Microsoft 365, what exactly do we mean, right? And so this has been really helpful for a lot of our customers that are used to buying like Office 365, and then they may, they probably go and purchase Windows, and then they may go and purchase Enterprise Mobility and Security. So what we've done is we've said, look, not only do people want to be extremely productive in their lives and on any device at any time, but they also want to have the best security and compliance posture possible when they're allowing their users to work. And so this is where we've come up with one package called Microsoft 365, and at its simplest form, it is the best of your productivity experiences powered by Office 365. You like that new 3D art that I have in PowerPoint there? So Microsoft 365 consists of Office 365, the best of Office 365. It includes the best of our Enterprise Mobility and Security suite. So think of things like Intune, think of things like conditional access, cloud app security, auto classification, labeling, and protection of your data, right? So all the things that are really important to helping you become GDPR compliant, a lot of those things are built right into our Enterprise Mobility and Security suite. And then we also wrap that all up and put it on the most modern desktop you can imagine, powered by Windows 10 Enterprise. And so that's what Microsoft 365 is, right? It's the best of Office 365. It is the best of our Enterprise Mobility and Security, and it's the best of Windows 10. And when you combine all of those together, you literally are giving your users the most complete, secure, intelligent, mobile, and compliant productivity experience on Earth. And so that's what Microsoft 365 is. So why is that important, right? Why did we put so much effort into making sure that not only are you able to be productive, but you're able to be secure and compliant at the same time? And this is not a new effort for us at Microsoft, right? Satya, when he took over as CEO of our company, it was fundamental for him. He realized very early on, even before CEO, that increasingly businesses and users, and even now more so than ever, consumers are really betting how much do we trust the technology that we use every day. And so we realize at Microsoft that in order for you to rely on us to run your business or your consumer lives, you need to trust us, right? We need to give you the best of the security and compliance that is available on Earth. And so that's what keeps us up at night. That's what we march to every day when we show up at work. And so one of the things that you should feel really comfortable about is the fact that here's a list of many, I should say, it's not a comprehensive list, but here's a list of many of the attestations that we've already earned in our cloud services. And so a lot of people think of GDPR, and there's a lot of companies that have, once it was announced, they started kind of thinking about compliance differently. We've been at this for many, many, many years. From the moment we stepped into the cloud, providing cloud productivity to our customers, we knew how strategic and important and critical security and compliance was. And so that's why we literally offer the deepest and most comprehensive compliance coverage in the industry. So when you think of that and you look through the lens of GDPR, GDPR is just another set of rules that we leverage the same innovation that we've already put into, for the most part, into our cloud services to help you in your compliance journey. And so one of the things, if you're not familiar with a lot of the work that we've done already, and we have been for years, we have this thing called the Trust Portal, or the Trust Center, sorry. So if you point your browser to Microsoft.com/trust, you'll see this landing page. This is a screenshot from this morning. And you'll see just how front and center we have GDPR in our Trust Center. But make no mistake about it, this is where you can dive into things. If you're a healthcare account, you can go learn what we've done around HIPAA. If you're a financial institution, you might be interested in FERPA and FSMA and all the things. There's a ton of different compliance standards that we help our customers with and have for years. And again, GDPR is just another one that we now are helping our customers with. For the most part, using the same approaches, right? There's just a different set of rules that we have to help you with. So I want to lay some quick ground rules here, right? And get some expectations out of the way. So first and foremost, GDPR is new to a lot of people, and so we have had, Connor and I get in front of a lot of our customers, and we've certainly had our fair share of IT orgs that come to us and say, hey, Microsoft, our CIO just came to us and said, we need to be GDPR compliant. And so we need you to help make us GDPR compliant. And so what we typically do there is say, listen, we feel like you may be missing a big component of your own journey with GDPR. Typically, it starts with your legal department, right? Your legal department needs to understand and read all the articles in GDPR, and then they typically need to come to the leadership team in IT and other departments and say, hey, here's the process we need to set up to map to our understanding of how we need to map to GDPR. And then IT go and talk to all of our providers, in this scenario would be us, Microsoft, and figure out what solutions they have that can help us with our journey, right? Our people and our processes to become GDPR compliant. So just make sure, one kind of red flag is if IT is the sole driver of GDPR, then we typically find that you're missing out on something from a GDPR perspective. And obviously, you're doing all this so that you can keep your auditors up to speed on exactly what you put in place to make sure that you're snapping to GDPR. The other thing here is GDPR is global. So a lot of US customers that we walk in the doors of every day, initially we're like, hey, we're not in Europe, so we don't need to adhere to GDPR. Well, the reality is, if you have GDPR residents as employees, or if you provide goods or services to Europe, then you have to adhere to GDPR in one form or fashion or the other. And so that's another thing that customers, most have learned that already. And most legal departments have educated the folks within the organization, like, hey, we do have employees from Europe and we do provide goods and services, so we do have to adhere to GDPR. Again, going back to your legal department, kind of setting the swim lanes for how your organization needs to adhere to GDPR. Then, this is probably the most important one. You have to be comfortable today, and even on Friday when GDPR is fully launched, right, initially, that there's a ton of vagueness in everyone's understanding of each of these articles. There's tons of words in each of the articles of GDPR, and each of those words can be interpreted many different ways. And so we fully believe that on the 25th and the 26th and the remainder of a number of years, probably, there's going to be a lot of courtroom time spent peeling back each of the words within each of those articles to truly set what exactly does each article mean, right, from a court of law perspective. And so just stay informed, right? Keep an eye on our Trust Center and make sure you're plugged in with your local account teams. And we are also doing some really cool things that Connor will show you in a few moments to help you with your entire journey and make sure that you're looking at all the new information that's coming into you. So at this point, I'm going to let Connor take over the helm here. Connor is a great friend and colleague of mine. He is a compliance specialist here in the southeast of the United States with me. And so, Connor, I'm going to kick it over to you and let you continue on.
Great. Thanks, Brent. I appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. I'm really excited to talk to you today about data privacy and GDPR, with it going to effect in a couple of days. This is a really hot topic, as Brent had mentioned. So we're glad to have you here. Thank you for joining us. Before we dive in, right, the focus of today is around GDPR, but you will hear me talk about data privacy probably more than you might hear the term GDPR. And why do I say that? Because GDPR is a specific regulation that is obviously a priority for a lot of organizations in the present, but it is, like Brent said, it's just another one of the regulations that we comply to, or that we are, that us as organizations have to think about. And so they kind of fall into the realm of data privacy and compliance. So I just wanted to throw that out there. At Microsoft, right, maybe you've heard of our mission before, but at Microsoft, our mission is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. Now, this takes on a whole new meaning when we think about compliance and data privacy. We've been doing this. We've been empowering people to do great work for a long time, but as these stringent regulations are implemented around the world, we as a company have had to adapt if we are to stay true to that mission. So today, we're going to talk through some of the things that Microsoft is doing in the compliance space to ultimately help you as an organization continue to do the great work that you do. Now, Brent had also mentioned about it being a global issue, and it really is, right? It's global for the organizations, but it's also ushering in a new wave for consumers as well, in terms of the power that they have over their data. GDPR really is just the starting point. It's just the beginning, but I would anticipate that there are going to be a host of regulations from countless countries around the world that are going to implement similar types of regulations, including the United States. So even though GDPR is the first, if you do not operate in Europe, or you don't have any residents that reside in Europe, I still think that there's a lot of value for you here, because I think in the next 2 to 3 to 5 years, as Brent was saying, we will start seeing a lot of regulations in countries that you might operate in. A couple of interesting data points, though, around the consumer side is that studies have shown, and some recent studies, is that when customers are thinking about their data privacy, they're thinking about it in a whole new light. And so this particular study shows that customers are more concerned with their data privacy than they were in the loss of income. Now, that seems like a pretty startling fact for me. It was certainly enlightening when I learned that. But it's giving us an idea into the minds of how our consumers, the people who are purchasing goods and services from us, are thinking. KPMG also did a report recently that shows that over half of the consumers in the market today are making purchasing decisions based on how they feel that the organization or the company that they're doing business with is using their data. So again, it's just solidifying that this is a top plate item or top plate idea for consumers, and therefore it should be for us as well. And this last one, less than 10%, a very small amount of consumers feel that when they do business with somebody, when they purchase a good or service from someone, that they have any control over how that data is used, their personal data is used. And I thought this was very interesting, because in years past, from my own experience, when I have chosen to do business with a company, I purchase something, a good or service, I have zero control over my data, right? I have chosen to give that information to them, and then they can use that for marketing purposes. They can really do whatever. And so this statistic is actually very interesting, because it shows that people are starting to become aware of this. And I think that we're gonna see that number grow exponentially as more regulations like this are put into place. And I think that number will really increase. So how does Microsoft think about data privacy, right? We have been at this for a long time. We're not new to this game. We're not just jumping in and saying, hey, GDPR is coming, holy smokes, we need to get in and we need to do this thing called compliance. Really, we have been advocates in the data privacy space for a really long time. Brad Smith, who is the president of Microsoft and our chief legal officer, tweeted a couple of years ago, and he says that in a world fueled by data, privacy and data protection have never been as important as they are today. That's so true. And the point that I want to draw your attention to is that this was from a couple of years ago. This was from before GDPR was actually approved to be put into place. That happened the same year in 2016. So when we think about data, when we think about privacy, we are on the front lines of saying, as data increases, right? There's more data in the world today. There's more data in our organizations that we're managing today than ever before. We need to be good stewards of it. We need to manage this well, and we need to get out in front of it before it kind of runs on without us. A couple of statements here that just kind of highlight how Microsoft views you as the customer and your data. We certainly see you as the owner of your data, or to use the term that is actually in the GDPR, it's controller. You own the data, you control the data. At Microsoft, we are just the processor. We will only do with what your data, with what you tell us to do. So we don't have any stake in actually controlling any of the data that is hosted in any of the Microsoft clouds. Another one I want to draw your attention to is the advocacy for data privacy that Microsoft has displayed for quite a while. One of the ways that this has come to fruition is in the court system, right? In the global court system, where governments has come to Microsoft and said, hey, we are subpoenaing some records from this organization that are stored in your cloud. And at Microsoft, we have said, no, we're not going to surrender this data to you because it's not our data. It's the customer's data. You have to go through that channel. You have to go through them to get the data. And we have actually gone to court with those governments, and we have won. And we are on the front lines of trying to get laws passed in different countries that says that governments can't come to Microsoft or can't come to cloud providers and force us to give data of a certain customer. And so that's just another way that is probably not, you may not have ever been aware of, but that's just an example of what we are doing and saying, no, our customers' data is important, it's private, it's confidential, we will not give it to you. And then that last bit about contractual commitments we'll talk about in a little bit. As we go forward, there's kind of four main buckets or four pillars of our compliance or data privacy model, and they fall into these columns here: discover, manage, protect, and respond. So discover is the kind of the foundational element and the ability to understand what data do you have, where does it reside, what is it, who has access to it, etc. Then managing it, once you are able to locate all of that data, now what do you do with it, right? And then protecting it by, you have knowledge of where this data resides, you have some of these actions that you can take as a result of it. Now we need to protect certain encrypt certain crown jewels, as we say. We need to protect certain things so that certain business groups don't have access to this and certain external parties don't have access to that, etc. And then the reporting that we have, once we have identified all of this information, right, we're managing it and we're protecting it, now we need to have an ongoing reporting of how our data is being used, moved around, etc. within our organization. We don't have time to cover all of these in depth, and so we're not going to go through each one of these, but I want to highlight just a couple of them so this is within the enterprise mobility and security stack, as Brent had alluded to earlier. We've got privileged identity management, right? This comes to the core function or the core capability of understanding the identity of each person and granting permissions based on that identity. You'll also see Azure Information Protection, which spans across all four of these categories, because having the ability to automatically classify based on content that is in that particular file, right, being able to take actions on that, such as automatically encrypting it, right? So there's some really great things in Azure Information Protection. Moving on to Office 365, again, content search. Having a capability, or having a tool that you can go one place where you can search across all of the cloud data in your organization and find information about a particular data subject, about a particular topic, etc. And then e-discovery, having the ability to control or having the ability to preserve, right? There are cases where we need to preserve some of the data for legal proceedings. And then lastly, the audit logs. Everything in the Office 365 world is audited, and so you can go and you can see how data has been manipulated, has it been deleted, has it been, etc. And lastly, in Windows, and this is both Windows 10 and Windows Server. So if there's any Windows Server folks, on this broadcast as well today, you might recognize some of these. But the thing I want to draw your attention to here is just the dynamic access control. Again, going back from the privileged identity management, we believe that people should only have access to what they need at the time that they need access to it, and that includes the systems that actually host this data as well, and all of that is audited and logged as well. So when we talk about GDPR, I've talked to a number of customers about GDPR, and they will say, hey, is your technology GDPR compliant? And that's kind of a loaded question, because when we talk about contractual commitments, yes, our technology, we have committed to our customers in the form of contracts with them that when you host your data in the Microsoft cloud, we as a company make possible that our technology is GDPR compliant. However, simply by putting your data in the Microsoft cloud does not automatically make your organization GDPR compliant. Ultimately, if you've read the regulations, 200 and some pages, it's very detailed and very confusing at times. It does not actually have anything to do with technology. It's all about processes and the people to facilitate those processes. So things like a data privacy officer and the staff to be able to respond to data subject requests when a data subject comes forth and say, hey, I need to know how you are using my data, right? You have to have the people to be able to do that. Then on the process side, you have to have the structure in place to say, okay, someone just came forward and asked, or submitted a data subject request. Now what are we going to do? Step 1, step 2, step 3. So these are, these two pillars are what you as the customer have to own in order to become GDPR compliant. The technology piece is what Microsoft has been at for a really long time. Brent talked about Microsoft 365 being enterprise mobility and security, Office 365 and Win 10, the best of all three of those combined into one. We have the compliance manager, which is actually where we're going to spend the majority of our time today. And so that's something that Microsoft owns. That's something that we have done really well. But one of the things that we like to refer to is the idea of shared responsibility. And so when we come together and we say Microsoft owning the technology and you as the customer having the people and the processes, we can come together and your organization can become GDPR compliant because of this kind of partnership. And so we like to say technology helps people facilitate process when it comes to GDPR. So how can Microsoft help? Going back to the contractual commitments, we were one of the first, if not the first cloud provider, to our knowledge, that has made contractual commitments with our customers that says that the cloud services that you use, that you host your data in, we will comply with GDPR. We will have the controls in place to allow you to manage your data according to the General Data Protection Regulation and remain compliant. So we are serious about this, and we have been. Compliance Manager is again, we're going to talk, this is a dashboard. It's going to be kind of our treasure map to compliance. A lot of times customers will say, hey, there's this whole compliance idea. I don't even know where to start. And so we have mapped it out for you, and we'll talk about that. Probably in a future TryThisAtWork session, we will dive more into the content search and maybe do some demos around that, as well as some of the other controls. But I wanted to highlight it here as well. And so you may be asking, how do I get started? Well, let's look at the Compliance Manager. Compliance Manager is a cross-Microsoft cloud service solution. It's designed to help organizations meet the complex compliance obligations that they have today. So there's three key capabilities of the Compliance Manager. The first is an ongoing risk assessment. Similar to the Secure Score in the Security and Compliance Center, Compliance Manager provides a compliance score for each assessment tile in the dashboard. So for example, organizations will be able to see a compliance score of the Office 365 GDPR assessment, which reflects Microsoft's and the customer's compliance performance of meeting GDPR requirements when using the Office 365 service. Once organizations move their data into the cloud, it becomes a shared responsibility, which we talked about, for both Microsoft and the organizations to become compliant. And in each assessment tile, organizations can get the detailed information provided by Microsoft to auditors and regulators as part of various third-party audits and things like that. Microsoft's cloud services, for example, so there's things like ISO 27001, ISO 27018, right? These are other tiles and other assessments that you will see in the Compliance Manager. The second thing that the Compliance Manager does is give you actionable insights. So we will provide the organization's information that helps them to improve their data protection capabilities. So for each customer managed control within the Compliance Center, organizations will see recommended customer actions, which we will dive into in a little bit, with links to the support documentation as well as step-by-step guidance for how to implement that control. What we've done is we've connected the regulatory requirements with the solutions that can help your organization become compliant. And then the third thing is simplified compliance. So Compliance Manager provides the control management tool to enable organizations to assign, track, and record compliance and assessment related activities. This can help organizations cross team barriers to achieve compliance goals when there's multiple people across a bunch of different teams. And then additionally, it allows organizations to upload and manage evidence related to their compliance activities into a secured repository. So we're going to take a look at this dashboard itself. So today the star of our show is a gal named Megan. So we are actually in her tenant today, and Megan is a compliance officer for her company. Her job is to oversee and to document her organization's efforts to comply with a range of regulations and standards. So this is her view of the Compliance Manager, and this is going to give her a summary of her company's current data protection or compliance situation as it stands today. You, on your first time signing in, you'll see several assessments that are created by default in the default group, as Megan sees here. Again, each tile represents an assessment, which is a combination of a Microsoft cloud service and the regulation against which an organization wants to measure its compliance. Also note the compliance score, which is a dynamic score that will change as controls in the assessment are implemented. Currently, the Compliance Manager Megan's able to create them around Office 365, the Dynamics 365 Cloud, and the Azure Cloud. But today, Megan is going to create an assessment for Office 365 and the General Data Protection Regulation. So let's go ahead and dive into this one here. And now, in the detailed information page of an assessment, we're able to see all of the services included in the scope of this assessment in this first section called Office 365 In-Scope Cloud Services. So we're going to go ahead and click on that. Now, every assessment has a different set of services included in the audits. Microsoft classifies applications and services into 4 categories based on Microsoft's control framework. Again, discover, manage, protect, report. Each category is determined or defined by specific compliance commitments that must be met for an Office 365 service or related Microsoft service to be listed in that category. So for GDPR, Microsoft has a contractual commitment that our technology will be compliant with GDPR by the 25th, in a couple of days, by Friday. And so those are all listed here in this block under Office 365 In-Scope Cloud Services. Now we are going to look at the Microsoft Managed Controls. So we've talked about the idea of a shared responsibility. Here it is, live in the flesh. The Microsoft Managed Controls section provides information about the controls that we have enabled and the controls that we've already taken, right? So we as a cloud provider, we have data centers, we are hosting these services, so we have, in order to stay compliant, we have to have certain things in place, and so that's what we have listed here. So we open them, and you can see that there's a number, a slash, and then a following number, and that's just letting us know that the amount of them that have been implemented. And so under the Microsoft Managed Controls, all of them have. And you can see the ones that are organized in several control families. They align with a structure corresponding to a certification or a regulation. So we're going to look into the security control family. And doing this allows Megan to see, or you to see, the control information, including the control ID, the section or the article number from the certification or regulation that the control maps to. So currently, the control ID for the GDPR-related controls uses the a PIMS ID, which is a Personal Information Management System methodology, instead of the corresponding GDPR article number. She can also find the corresponding title, article numbers, etc. In this control as well. So in that second column, we can see the compliance score for that specific control. Now, in the previous scene, when we saw the entire dashboard, we had a compliance score that was all of the controls added up. This is a compliance score just for this control, indicates the level of risk due to non-compliance or control failure associated with each Microsoft managed control. So they're rated from 1 to 10. Each compliance score is rated from 1 to 10, and they're color-coded. Yellow indicating a low risk, orange indicating medium risk, and red obviously indicating a high risk control. Compliance score is calculated on assessment activity. It looks at whether each assessment control is preventative, detective, or corrective, and whether it's mandatory or discretionary. Lastly, it considers the impact of the control failure on the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data, factoring in the legal and regulatory risks arising from that type of control failure. So in this section, we can also see information about the implementation status, the date the control was tested, who performed the test, and the test results, etc. So let's go ahead and click More. And here's the implementation details for each control, which we can read more about. So in the audit reports, Megan can see what Microsoft does to become compliant with a regulation or an industry standard. Here in the Compliance Manager, though, we can find out how Microsoft implements each internal control to meet specific requirements. Microsoft is very committed to being transparent and sharing detailed information with organizations that you need in order to perform your own risk assessments. So let's go ahead and back out of that. Here's also a detailed view around the control test plans, right? So we can see all the test plan details as well, similar to the implementation details. And if any findings are recorded in an audit, it will be noted, and a Microsoft excuse me, management response will also be included here in the space provided. So now let's back out of that. Let's take a look at the customer managed controls. This section of controls are those that are managed by your organization, that you are responsible for implementing as part of your compliance process. Again, these are controls that Microsoft has developed, many of them that you're already familiar with. We've just organized them here. Again, kind of think of it as a little treasure map. So here it looks like very similar to what we saw in the Microsoft managed controls, but this time these are the controls that you own around. You also see the control ID, the title, article, description, etc. Let's scroll down, and for some of them, we can find related controls or articles. So, for example, this control 6.10.1.2, it corresponds to GDPR Article 32.1a. and Article 5.1.1f. The control is also related to other controls, though, in ISO 27001, 27018, HIPAA, NIST 800-171, and NIST 853. So once your organization, or once Megan today, completes this or implements this control and passes all of the testing that needs to be done, then her organization will get credit, if you will, for all of those assessments or related controls. So since this is a high risk with a high compliance score of 8, and it's related to 7 other controls, when she implements this control, she clicks. When she assigns it and it goes through this whole testing again, then the compliance score will be updated within all of those other assessments. All right, now for this control though, 6.10.1.2, it's about implementing appropriate technical and organizational measures to protect the data. So we're going to click more, read more, and see more about this. And here she can read the details that she needs to take. So in this case, it's around having data handling standard policies and SOPs that document her organization's requirements for encrypting personal data. In addition to the prescriptive guidance, Compliance Manager also provides the solutions that her organization can leverage to implement this control. So in this case, there was a hyperlink to Office 365 message encryption. She can click that, and this is going to take her to the support documentation with all of the information that she needs to understand about the control. And then there's even links within there to where she can learn how to implement that control. So back in the Compliance Manager, the assessments have a built-in workflow management functionality that you can use and that Megan's going to use today to track her organization's progress toward completing the assessment. So as the compliance officer, she needs help from the IT team, and so she's going to recruit some help. So she's going to click Assign. And she's going to recruit her friend Alan DeYoung, who is the IT admin who will oversee implementing this control. So she's going to find Alan. There he is. And since it's a high-risk control that impacted several assessments, she's going to notate that accordingly. She's going to select this as a high priority. And then next, she's going to add some notes. So she's going to say, please implement this control and provide the relevant evidence. So once Megan clicks Assign, the system will actually send an email notification of this action item to Alan. So we're going to go ahead and click Assign. This control is now assigned to Alan, as you can see there. And we're going to actually flip over to Alan's view and see what he sees. So he received an email from the Service Trust portal, and he's going to click View Action Item that was assigned to him. He's going to log in. He'll type in all of his information, and he's going to have a similar view. So he's going to see all the action items that have been assigned to him in this Action Items tab. He will have the same control information that Megan saw from her account, so it's going to look very similar. But this time he's actually able to take some of the actions here. So he's going to come in here to manage documentation. He's going to upload the relevant documentation, the evidence that he's collected saying that, hey, we implemented this control, this is what we did, right? And he's going to find it on his desktop. So there it is. He selects it, and there it is. Now it's uploaded into the Compliance Manager. So we'll go ahead and click X. Alan marks the control status as implemented, right? So he will select implemented here, and then he will also select the implementation date. And so we'll select, there we go. So now Alan's going to reassign the control back to Megan, and what she's going to then do is review and test this. So we're going to skip back to, or he's going to reassign it. Select Megan, who in this case is the administrator, and then change the priority. Now that it's been implemented, he's going to change that priority to a medium. Add some notes, and then click Assign. So now Megan received an email notification and came back to the detailed information page of this implementation details. So as we can see here, she can review the notes. She can review that Alan did in fact do this. And she can say that the testing date was on this date after Alan made that implementation, and that the result of the test is that it passed. And so, you know, being around encryption, she may have sent a particular email that had some test data in it that would trip the encryption rule, and it in fact did. And so then she can say, great, so this in fact passed. So on the assessments dashboard, now that Megan can see, there's one control has been implemented in the Office 365 GDPR assessment. Also, one related control in the other NIST 853 and the three other controls in the ISO 27000 assessment are also marked as completed. So that's giving you an idea of how when you implement the control under one assessment, it's going to apply and you're going to get credit for it in the other assessments as well. The synergy of implementing that one control across multiple assessments will help your organization to reduce the time and the efforts spent on these compliance efforts. So, but to be prepared for audits, Megan can also download a detailed report from that dashboard. And so what she's going to do is she's going to come in here and she's going to export this to Excel. And in so doing, what it's going to do is it's going to actually pop out all of the information that is contained within that the GDPR assessment. It's going to put it in this Excel form, which then she can run pivot tables. She can manipulate, and she can in fact even upload it into Power BI, and she can create a really cool dashboard around it. So just to recap, Compliance Manager is going to simplify the end-to-end regulation to audit journey for organizations when using the Microsoft Cloud services. It's again now available for Azure, Dynamics 365, and Office 365 subscribers in the public clouds. If you're a GCC customer, feel free to reach out to either Brent or I, and we can talk, because there might be some differences for you.
Thanks, take care, and goodbye for now.